before we get started with that text is, all right, my Italian accent's gonna be really interesting in New York coming through looking at text. This is gonna be really funny. So how many folks understand at least or are familiar with privacy enhancing technologies? Some familiarity. All right, that's helpful because we're gonna figure out how to weave this in to make it relevant for you. For the people who haven't, there's some stuff and slides in here. They're gonna help you out a little bit on your journey, how best to sell it in, position it, and then work with firms like Databricks to make this happen. So, anything else you want before I jump in?
No.
All right. Private preview. We've been working with Databricks probably for 8 months on this.
So I got this shirt 2 years ago when we had our first meeting about it. So
First meeting. So the ideas have been there, but private preview built the clean rooms, but it's not just clean rooms stacked with privacy enhancing technologies and then laddering other capabilities like bias detection and other things you may need for your journey as well. So it's not just the clean room itself, but what we're able to do in the clean room for privacy preserving technologies and compute, which makes this kind of interesting.
And that started last fall. So yeah, 8 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a bit about MasterCard to see if the clicker works. Nice.
Sweet.
Or no? Did I?
Oh, we have a blank slide, it looks like.
What? Okay, how about this? There we go.
you go.
Okay, cool. So, MasterCard, where we are a bit here, data is at the core of our business. Different things need to say, data innovation delivers value, and then with this innovation and value comes growth, the growth of our data profiles and your profile, and as we heard today in the keynote this morning, I guess we're all sitting on gold mines, which I thought was really interesting this morning, didn't think about it that way. But the trick was how do we extract insights and distill intelligence? So MasterCard. Many of you think about us as a credit card company, and by the numbers you could see here, that is true, but we're much, much more than that. And when you think about it, we've been growing within the payments industry, services, and networks and capabilities. And what's been really fun for us is how do we, especially in the strategy group, think about how do we increase the value, utility, and privacy of our data, and pets has been a way for us to do that. Now, when I think about this, and some of you may have seen in financial services, I presented this before as well, about versatility. Anybody here ski or ride, snowboard? Yes, a few people. Okay, so you will get this slide. And I say this because I have a fun job teaching snowboarding as well, and I tell my clients, what you do on the trail, you take to the trees and you use in the park. It's all about versatility. And part of our journey with Databricks has been about the versatility of the platform and the use of clean rooms to do things we didn't know were possible 2 years ago. And from there, how do we do it in such a way to democratize the ideas that we have on using the clean room and privacy technologies? So now comes the other piece of this, quality. For any of you that cook or bake, you can appreciate the quality of the ingredients makes a difference to what you do, and the quality of the ingredients relates to the quality of our data. So if you think about food being related to data, how it's sourced, is it ethical? Do you have consent? Is it real? Is it synthetic? Is it modeled? And also, what did you pay for it? So the data is a super interesting component of this as well, and it has qualities. So when you think about it in the pet's journey, it's another thing that we need to get into. Dude, you threw your cats in there. Okay.
I snuck some cats in there, John.
All right, so when we think about pets, and this is so when we do the demo, we're gonna explain about the knowledge bot that we built as well and how it differentiates pets. But these pets have qualities that will relate to privacy enhancing technologies, not only emerging, growing, critical, competitive advantage, and complex, but if you've ever been to a park with a puppy and you wanna meet somebody, it does provide a competitive advantage to you versus people that don't have a cute puppy. And that big girl is Callie, and that is Poppy, so, and then your cats?
Bruce and LeBron.
Oh, okay, all right.
The boss.
The boss. All right, so the big thing here is the complexity of the pets in all seriousness, because it is really important that the complexity is what we're trying to address. So when we think about pets, now jumping into this again, an emergent set of technologies that enable both more utility of the data assets while ensuring continued compliance with the evolving set of data privacy laws as we need to protect our consumers, banks, as well as the merchants' information. And the growth number is probably a lot more growth numbers, 32 billion, 22% a year. This is going to be meaningful for a space for us all to play in, to leverage these technologies, and to do it in such a way that this is critical for our businesses. And it's fun to think about pets, not just, and we work with privacy attorneys all the time, part of our job, but how do we take this beyond compliance, but to a competitive advantage? Because without this, how are we going to differentiate going forward? And think about this complexity side, implementation, integration, and as well for some of the vendors in the room, understanding. So from pets as a point of view here, the traditional thinking, it's been a trade-off for privacy and utility, and that's true in a vacuum, but not really anymore. And when you think about pets themselves, they fall on a spectrum. One side, perfect data privacy, other part, perfect utility. And there's a handful of pets here in the middle that we can use for each varying use case. And what we're seeing, multiple pets can solve multiple use cases. So it really depends where you are in your journey from a privacy, but also a technology, what you can have within your stacks. So now, to make all this happen, what we've realized as part of these journey for 2 years, governing framework. Not many folks are speaking about this, but we're finding it's really, really important to make this scale. What I would argue is that if you're dealing with privacy attorneys, how do you not have a line for every use case at their door every week? We have found through our use cases and working with a handful of vendors, if we drop all the tools and techniques in that bottom quadrant, we needed to have a repeatable process to run through this use case profiling, the data processing requirements, and then I could swap in and out different tools I need, and the validation. So some of the things we're going to show you where we built automated logging with Unity Catalog to do that validation, so this could be explainable whether it be to auditors or to regulators or in such a way of 5th grade math. So for those of you who are familiar with pets, please work with me here from an illustration as I try to put this in 3 major categories. If you think about it from illustration purposes, the stuff that are executing masking and marking versus the stuff that's all the way on the other side, which is the model-based, and then in the middle, the protected governed collaborations. So many of you are thinking about the different noise or mathematical techniques for differential privacy. But then how do we go beyond that and thinking about synthetic data? Synthetic data is a simulation. Some of the simulations for lower level use cases, GANs may be more appropriate. Some of the ones that may need higher level explainability, non-GAN approaches, may be something that's more interesting to you in such a way based upon your explainability. And then the digital steganography or watermarking is really cool, and we're finding more and more use cases about that, about embedding watermarks into tabular data for various different purposes. Now on the other side, you think about the model-based stuff, where you've got data sovereignty, where the data doesn't move, but the models can. A lot of use cases here, and I think, did you guys already start talking about your, not yet? Okay.
So I think with Unity Catalog being opened up, right, a lot of these model approaches and multi-party computation kind of come into the clean room through the delta sharing aspect of Unity Catalog.
So with that side of it, and then you think about multi-party computation, is this really a trusted execution environment? Is it not? How's privacy going to view this? It really depends upon where you guys are in your risk profile to argue it one way or another. Mm-hmm. But the point about this is we are crashing this all together in a clean room. This is what we're trying to show to help with the utilization of many of these technologies and techniques along the way. So at the end of the day, how do we do this without the parties ever having access to that sensitive data? When I say sensitive, it could be the privacy of the row and the confidentiality of the set. 2 different things we need to solve for. Now, you're all seeing the hype cycle, so on and so forth on this. It's taking a while for this explosion of interest to happen. For the pet vendors here in the audience, I'm sure you're all gonna nod along with me. It's taking a while. While the growth is there, it's still taking a while because it's complex. We're starting with technologies and not solving for use cases, but that is shifting. And I always pronounce this right, the Center for Information Policy and Leadership has listed 5 implementation hurdles. Gaps in understanding, pets can be use case specific, cost prohibitive, unclear security control requirements for each, and then, of course, for my technology friends, don't throw anything at me, it's really hard to implement. So how do we manage all that along the way? So at MasterCard, taking a data-driven approach, 80, 50, 10. In our 2 years, a little less with this, we have over 80 different use cases. We've spoken to and/or evaluated over 50 different technology partners in the pet space. We have 10 active pilots and POCs running. So we're trying to figure this out along the way, and that's where the learnings of the governing framework came in. And how do we do this in such a way that makes this all understandable without the cost prohibitives? And that's what we're trying to solve here with Databricks. Now, how do we do this when we don't have SMEs? I've got privacy, I've got business, I've got technology. So this is what we're trying to solve with the clean room. All right, for those of you who are earlier on, why should you care? For those of you who are on the journey, this is why you need to continue to care and help me on this journey. So ethics, risk, value, and growth. So from an ethical point of view, when I think about MasterCard, this is really important for us in understanding where we are coming from a place of trust, that the ethical use of individual data through our data and technology responsibility principles. If you don't know what these are, go Google it or come find me. It's super important. And then the risk side, think about this, emerging and often inconsistent privacy regulations. Oops, sorry. And then now as we look through this again, unlocking the value of the data. And then lastly, how do we continue to innovate with this data with the growing use in the AI products? So now in closing, okay, the text messes this up, but why would you put all this at risk when you've got over, what is this now? 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6 times more likely to retain customers, and 19 times more likely to be profitable and successful. So why would we put all this at risk? So at the end of the day, what we're seeing here with the clean rooms, it's a spectrum of collaboration versus trust. Secure, controlled, analytical capabilities, protections, and pets. We are stacking all these together with that secure collaboration environment, the controlled environment with explicit consent, which is super important. How do you do the analysis of sensitive and confidential data, along with adding in all these additional protections beyond the ideas around differential privacy, or sometimes you'll see in other clean rooms, depending upon how it's put together, we call sometimes privacy theater or plausible deniability. Just because you put some noise in doesn't make the data safe. And then lastly, how do we add in additional pet capabilities to help us along the way, as I talked about things with synthetic data or homomorphic encryption or things along the way. So now, what are clean rooms? And I think tomorrow there's a session on this as well. They're talking about this at the keynote. All right, so you all have a huge cheat sheet and get some coffee during this tomorrow. And it's interesting that you guys ripped off the MasterCard logo this morning with a Venn diagram. I just want to call that out. But if you think about it, they're temporary, ephemeral, secure, privacy-preserving environments for the insights between one or more parties. And the value seen here is super important for us, and if the demo live works, you'll see the speed, the value, and the trust to deliver the different innovation we don't yet know. And then lastly, here are some pieces for the use cases across MasterCard that based upon the firms that you have, you may have ones that are the same. All right, now that you know what they are, here are some examples. Peer-to-peer, hub and spoke. Internal, external. Again, just an illustration. I'm sure there's going to be more, but if you think about partner to partner, that could be external. Internal, how am I going to have a data host and a data user? And the hub and spoke, if you think about the different combined data sources between the users, contributors, or the folks that do both. But the kicker of this is the additional capabilities. This is what's been really fun on the journey that you're going to see more and more about privacy-preserving clean rooms. You can have the matching of the capabilities. How do you put in that privacy-preserving compute? And what we've been able to do with one of our SI partners, build in intelligent logging on the things that happen going right to Unity Catalog, because there's no way we could have gotten this through privacy without that auditability here embedded in the clean room. And then how do we do this in such a way with Databricks AI and BI? You guys just renamed this again.
Right. That one was my fault, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you're going to see,
yeah.
I think you called it Databricks IQ and...
So the intelligence engine, right? In the same way that Delta Engine sits on top of your raw data lake and makes it so that transactions are performant, right? We now have the intelligence engine that's doing the same thing for semantics and all this telemetry coming through all your feeds, including clean rooms.
Okay, so now you're starting to see the connection of the clean room. It's not just riding on that serverless compute, it's starting to leverage the entire Databricks platform. And just for kicks, we built an LLM knowledge bot on this. So we took about 100 different assets we had about everything we know about privacy preserving technologies and compute, what the Mastercard standards are, loaded it into a volume, and then in 2 weeks, built a knowledge bot. Are we gonna demo that today?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, if you say so. So
We just got to get off the VPN, but yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't need to drop the VPN. And what's cool about this is we talk about the challenge of explainability and understandability with it. And there's enough times I have to explain to our different people that just because you synthesize it doesn't mean you can try to monetize it. There's a lot of learnings we need to have. Or when I'm spinning up the clean room, what do I need to do? Or I'm reading a report, what do I need to check for? And building that right into the Databricks assistant has been something fun for us to try to move forward.
Yeah.
All right. This is how it's going to work for us. So when you think about, we talk about the speed and trust of collaborations, super important for us. So if you think about MasterCards on one side, the 2 different collaborators, right? These are the steps we're gonna take and we're going to demo here. Some of it's gonna be a little pre-baked for speed, but we're gonna walk through. It's super important that the requirements and controls get agreed to ahead of time. That's that whole process I talked about. It's really, really important because everything is use case specific. If you don't think so, go ask a lawyer. They will tell you everything depends upon the use case. And how do you govern and manage that? And then once we do that, spinning up the clean room, you'll see. And then once that data is brought in, we're gonna run different privacy checks. We have base checks and then additional checks that we've customized for our clean room. Using our capabilities, some partners, and then one of the companies, Truata, which we acquired, is going to run right there in the clean room via pip install. Now, once that data is here, what we agreed to for those analysis, we can think about doing, there's 5. Query, join, co-table development, model serving, and iterative insights. Mm-hmm. So there's 5 types of quote unquote recipes that we're working with here based upon what we want to do along the way. And based upon those KPIs that we define in the requirements phase, we are going to log the KPIs we need for the metadata in Unity Catalog and then run reports, which was Lakehouse IQ. So during the requirements phase, in about 15 minutes, we're building the dashboards we need for the transparency and the auditability. And then it gets torn down, because that's super important. So from a value point of view, and this is my last slide to try to wrap this up, when you think about it, it's levels of flexibility, scalability, auditability, if I can get this out, interoperability. Yes. Okay. Super important, because I talked about that flexibility coming in because we don't know what we don't know what's coming. This is what's been really fun. And when you think about the capabilities, more and more we're using this. This is where you've got Delta, you've got Unity for the governance and lineage, and not all clean rooms do offer this. So it depends if it's important for you, this is what could be helpful. Serverless compute, really interesting. You heard more about that this morning. We've been playing with it, and it's been a fun journey to run these jobs and to parallelize with serverless compute. It does work for us. We're running our internal pets capabilities on it. And then lastly, how do we have that intelligence engine at the end to help with some of the auditing and logging? Anything I missed before I hand this over to you?
Well, I do want to clarify just because you mentioned it, right? So we've been working with the internal build of the clean room stations, right? And it's sitting on top of jobs. So this is in the public preview fully serverless, right? Okay. And so when everyone here, gets a chance to try this in a week or so, we'll hear, tomorrow, it will be fully serverless. It will be instant compute, and so some of the pre-baked things we're doing today won't be necessary. So
here you go.
Cheers. Thanks, John. So one of the things that's interesting to me working on this, so last year at Summit, I presented a talk on monetizing data through secure data sharing, right? And one of the things that we talked about in detail is essentially how having a open sharing protocol that's baked into your governance catalog, right? But with open extensions and on-prem, other tools, you're creating this new type of data mesh, right? And you're able to move data across Databricks to Databricks shares, Delta shares to open source, and it's all great, right? We've got cats and dogs and rocks, all the pets working together, right? But the thing I didn't talk about last year, because I hadn't honestly worked enough with John yet, is this doesn't go far enough for certain use cases, right? For things where privacy is important, for the type of data sets that MasterCard works with every day, things like data that can't leave a certain country, right? I can send you a Delta share and say, hey, don't copy it, right? But there's no enforcement mechanism, right? So compliance with audits, being able to say, hey, our data went here and it did this, right? Instead of it left our environment and then we kind of don't know, right? And so all these different things, PII, being able to actually check the quality of the data you're receiving, being able to have dynamic privacy controls instead of static, assuming the world doesn't change. And then one of the biggest things to me, I love Delta sharing, but when you do a Delta share, oftentimes you're moving over to a lowest common denominator security environment. This is critical to a team like MasterCard because I've worked with a lot of the folks in the room, and we've built a really great secure data intelligence platform, right? And they don't want that being basically have risk added to it just because there's other teams with less secure data shares that now have MasterCard data, right? So how do we address this? We add pets, right? So essentially by taking the same stack I talked about last year, but by adding this lane for the serverless compute with the different pets capabilities, right? John talked about, these 5 we're starting with. There's dozens, if not hundreds of capabilities. And because of the speed and flexibility with which we stood them up on Databricks Clean Rooms, that just becomes another lane or rail for the type of data that meets those requirements. So what pets do with these new capabilities is make it so that you can control data exfiltration. You can make it so that your system tables are aware of the privacy metrics on your data, not just a high level, what was read when. And then because we're collaborating with MasterCard, basically we're layering in those security controls that are critical for their most sensitive data on top of all the different sharing lanes. And then because of the way that Databricks notebooks work, this just fits in naturally into the way MasterCard and our partners are already doing development. It's not like we have to go into, some stapled on UI or use a weird SDK. This is just Databricks, and it's another new type of compute for privacy. And then critically, like John mentioned, all these stations are using Databricks serverless compute, so you don't have to worry about, my collaboration partner, they didn't have PCI DSS controls turned on, or they didn't have the right private link set up and now they're leaking data. So all these mechanisms basically enforce that. And so to illustrate kind of how this works and how the clean rooms protect transparency, flexibility, all those controls up at the top, I kind of want to take a deep dive into steps 4 and 5 of what John was sharing. Before I get into that, who in the room is familiar with the difference between Spark transformations and Spark actions? Does anyone remember their Spark books? Okay, so I'll make this so that you don't have to. So one of the things that's happening here is all this code that's being executed in your clean room station at the top. These are the commands you would see cell by cell in the notebook. What's happening in bottom is the actual Spark physical plan, like what's being read into memory, what's actually sitting on the cluster at any given time. And you can see through controls like Spark lazy evaluation, through being able to do primary key validation, filtering on joins, we minimize the data that's being accessed. We provide transparency, and we make it so that all these privacy protections can be enforced. And then my favorite part is only in step 5, when we're actually done, when we're rendering an output, do we see any results, right? So all these unnecessary columns, like, if I'm a cat, I don't care what dogs think about dog treats, right? I'm just looking to aggregate, my reviews at the vet. None of that data ever goes into the clean room, because when we're doing our dynamic execution flow, the Spark plan sees, that column isn't needed. It's not part of the query, so it's never read. And so at any given time for any given pet, we're touching the minimum amount of data that's required to do the use case, improving it at every single step of the way, and then putting that report into Unity Catalog and Databricks AI BI so that it's dead simple from an audit perspective to show what we did and how we did it, okay? So the last thing I want to share, this was a part of the talk last year as well. So we have this concept of a collaboration and trust matrix like John introduced, right? And Databricks has always had, I'm dealing with the subtitles now too. So they're on the bottom is our trust matrix, right? Low to high trust. And the idea is that through the Databricks data intelligence platform, right, you're uniquely able to activate all of these different types of mixtures of collaboration and trust. But then by adding Mastercard pets on top of it, we basically are layering privacy in. So Databricks is providing the serverless compute and Unity Catalog and all these different things to do secure data sharing, and then pets add a critical layer of privacy. And so together, it's created this awesome solution. And we've had enough slides, so let's go, check this out.
You need to cut this over. Okay, you do have a backup?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
So I'm
going
to change my mirroring so that you guys can all just see what I'm working on my laptop here. So I'm just going to go into display settings and then make all of this mirror my laptop. Okay. And then we'll have this mirror here, and I think we're good. Yeah, everyone can see what I'm seeing.
Have that pop up.
I know. Listen,
Mastercard security, that's all I have to say, and you picked a Mac, not a PC on this, so.
Yeah, that one's on me. That one's on me.
All right.
So what we're going to do to start with, and let me close my web inspector here, that would probably help. So I want to share kind of where this fits into Databricks, because I'm sure everyone's used Databricks, even if you don't remember your Spark actions and transformations. So I'm going to go to Clean Rooms within Unity Catalog.
Time out. You are logged into our
Let's be really clear. This is a MasterCard laptop, right? And I'm in MasterCard's production Databricks environment, right?
No, you were in
sorry, production grade, I should say.
Thank you.
It's a sandbox running in.
I was like, dude, we're already in prod? This is awesome.
Thank you for clarifying.
I was like,
so,
whoo!
What we're doing here by essentially doing it within this environment is, it's not like we poked a big hole in the firewall and now this works, right? Basically, these are Mastercard VPCs and Mastercard Compute and Mastercard Unity Catalog.
All right, and the data that we're going to use, so we have, one of the data sets we're going to bring up is our Mastercard Places data set. Think about it, someone who told me to call it the Mastercard Yellow Page. So information on 53 million merchants globally, all right? And some of that information we're going to do a join or a cross analysis?
Yeah, let's show them.
Okay.
Come on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a clean room. So anyone that's initiated a Delta share, this experience should be familiar to you. I'm going to get really creative and just call this demo for Data.is. And then I have a collaboration partner, Rearc, who we've been working with on the pets. And so what I'm going to do is just drop in their sharing identifier and create a clean room. And then what's cool is, like John mentioned, all I have to do is start adding data assets. And so I'm going to go in here to my catalog, and I'm going to pick this places sample.
Yep.
And now on the other side, Rearc can add the notebooks that basically make it, and Mark is, thankfully adding our notebook for us in real time here. Yeah. And so once that notebook is in, our collaboration starts, right? And Mark is actively clicking. And what happens is essentially that notebook is what I review to say, am I, as the data owner or the kind of inference provider, am I comfortable with this?
So with that, we talked about that governance, the use case understanding, the description, the reviews of the business stakeholders, the privacy. You agree to what are the terms we want to do, how does the data going to be treated, what kind of controls. All that goes into the notebook and we're ready to go.
Yep. And so as we can see, Mark shared the notebook with me, we're collaborating, we're good to go, I can open it up, right? Now, in the interest of time, like John mentioned, we've done some pre-canned runs. So I can go in this analysis notebook and I can actually see, let me go back here, sorry.
Now in that analysis notebook, we talked about the difference of privacy and confidentiality. There's a set of checks that we have along the way that were developed by us and our partners, which we've named here Privacy Check 1, Privacy Check 2, et cetera.
Yep.
Based upon pass and failed and the nested workflows, that's how we're ensuring the privacy and confidentiality of this specific use case can be met.
Yep, exactly. And so that's the idea. And so, I can see the runs I'm doing within the clean room. I can see this output task. And so this gives me an example kind of what we've been talking about with the notebook flow. So we see here at the top where we're doing our imports, right? This is essentially like installing libraries or packages into the clean room. One of the cool things we'll hear about tomorrow is UC volumes are a share that you can put into a clean room as well. So we can share Python binaries, wheels, jars, whatever you want, all running in the clean room.
And it's with that pip and so I talked about those collections of pets that we're using across the way. This is exactly what we're doing per clean room. And upon the execution, each of these pets, it gets logged into Unity. With that, I understand which pet was run, not only from my auditing reports, but also the flows on the billing and utilization for the DBUs. All of that is working its way through.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna start zipping along. We've got our yellow light, and we've got like 3 live demos you asked me to, or you made me promise to show. So let me rip this off. So we're instantiating our logging, right? So this allows us to write back, and then we can see these privacy checks, right? So essentially what it does is it takes a data set, and then depending on thresholds we're setting, depending on the type of privacy we want to check, when we bring in this data, we can do things like schema validation, but then down here, we can also execute those privacy checks that we imported, right? And so if that privacy check fails when we do this runner, this output would say failed instead, but then what's cool is because it's a Databricks notebook, no further cells run. And so that's the end. So basically every single step of execution is an additional gate kind of drilling down into further and further increased privacy until at the bottom of the notebook, we're all good and we can output only what's safe and secure, right? So we can analyze this data and we can look at basically a crossover threshold of like how much mutual data is shared between these two data sets. And for MasterCard, that determines, how much information they're leaking.
So see, it's more about from a pre-sales analysis. You can imagine if you've got data sets you have in your company that you, whether in those insights, whether you monetize or not, and you want to, instead of SFTPing old copies of it, you put it up here, do that crossover analysis with that template, you're done in the morning.
Absolutely.
So this has been really helpful for something as simple as what gets in the way of the utility and usefulness of a lot of the assets we have ready to go.
Yeah, and so one of the beauties of this is because it's arbitrary code, right? We can also render these great visualizations. We can store them as artifacts in the volume. So these are things that can be pulled in by the LLM to help generate the audit reports.
Can you just show the one piece of Databricks IQ?
Yeah, let me hop over to that. You actually read my mind. So I'm going to go over to my dashboards. And what we were able to create is these clean room overview reports. And so essentially what this lets me do, man, I forgot to turn on the cluster. I did everything else so we don't have a warehouse. And this is kind of on your fault. We don't have serverless yet.
Okay.
So let's,
do you want to let that run and pull up the LLM?
I'll let this run. And so what I was going to say is essentially this is our AI BI experience, and this is all just sitting on top of the data that's being written back from the clean room.
And what's good about this is I could have my business owner, based on the KPIs you have and the requirements which ones you want, drag and drop on the palette. We do this with our privacy attorneys and business stakeholders during the requirements gathering, and during that 1 hour session, we actually create the output reports we need right there.
Absolutely. So while the warehouse spins up, we have another piece we can show. So I'm going to fire up my node server here. And do we have anything else to show in Databricks?
No, are you gonna do the one with the UI or the?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So this is the chatbot LLM for pets. John's called it Knowledge Bot.
It's been called a Knowledge Bot.
Yeah,
yes.
And so what I'm gonna do, just because my firewall was eating this earlier, I'll say Data and IS demo. Hopefully no one yells at me. And so now I have this server that I can go over to, and this is running my Knowledge Bot LLM. And so essentially what we see here is the different personas of people that need to engage with clean rooms, whether it's product owner.
Yep. So we just customize this along the way to be like, there's 3 main areas we have to deal with. These are the people I get questions from all the time. Don't want to tell them to go look on Confluence. Don't want to tell them to go look it up. Don't want to tell them to read it at a PowerPoint. I don't want them to book a meeting. I don't want them to email me. Help yourself get your own answers. And this is what we did with those over 100 assets that we had of structured and semi-structured data, loading that up into a volume, and actually with our friends here from the Foundry, if some of you saw the Foundry speak earlier who have cooler slides because they've got a graphics person, this is the best that we could do to slap a front end on top to show you what we're going to do to embed as a Databricks assistant.
Yep, absolutely. And so I think our LLM endpoint is scaling up, but the UI is working. And so essentially what you can do is come in here and get advice on what pets to use, but then critically understand the pets you're using. So this is a great example of the response, but one of the ideas that we're working on is essentially taking those notebook outputs and saying, okay, I got an 85 sensitivity threshold. What does that mean? What do I do with that, right? One of the other critical things about this is, we can start saying like, are cats or dogs better pets? And it knows the difference between pets and pets. Notice it says, I can't answer any questions that aren't related to the use of data clean rooms and privacy enhancing technology. So we're keeping users on the rails, we're not hallucinating, and essentially we're taking this really tricky but powerful technology with privacy enhancing technologies and making it more scalable and accessible and democratized through LLM-based interfaces.
And that's why the different personas are such ways, our business stakeholders and privacy just have different kinds of questions, or how do I spin up a clean room? What do I do with these errors? So for every PET vendor we're working with, we're taking their knowledge bases and their READMEs and loading all of these in and making it all available in one spot.
Absolutely. So, before we forget, thank you everyone for participating in our session today. And, I'm logged, I just hit play from start, I meant to hit play from slide. I'm now logged out of Databricks, so I can't do any more demos, John. So I think we need to take some questions. Great.
Cool.
Thank you all so much.
Appreciate it. Cool.